All right, guys, today we're going to talk about data recovery as well as lab recovery. So as a customer, if you have a hard drive, if you have a computer that essentially is dead and you want the files, this is data recovery or lab recovery is pretty much like worst case scenario of where you can be. So why I want to talk about this? I want to talk about this because, customers, they come in, it's like a wild, wild west. They don't know exactly what they're going to get. And as somebody in the industry, I've seen, it running the gamut where down the street in New York, we have somebody that touts they could do it for $85 and he's notorious for, not recovering any files. So it's basically like a bait and switch, a way to get you in. And then we've seen, a California company that is pretty well known says and touts that they really work with the stars and celebrities and recovering all their files. And what happens is you speak to them, you call them, they give you a fancy sheet that says your lab recovery will be in the range of $750 to $3,500. And of course, it's always pegged at the top range when they get the drive and when they give you the quote of what it is. So it's annoying. It's another form of bait and switch, but at a higher level. And they really tout that this is what they do for all the stars, the celebs, so why can't you be like them too? It's ridiculous. So where do you go? What do you do? I am not doing this video to self-promote us because we do data recovery and lab recovery, but I am doing it because it pisses me off that there's a lot of customers out there and they're taken for rides left and right. So let's first talk about data recovery, lab recovery, what's the difference and what's involved. So data recovery, that could run the range of if you have a corruption in your computer, your hard drive. It could be where you're doing a file transfer. There could be some sectors that are bad on the drive, but basically you could do a transfer, but it's harder than just a copy of files. So there's something going on with the drive, but you can still do it. And that could basically be priced based on what the issue is. So realistically, it could go from $85 to $250 for something like that. Now, if you have something that's deemed lab recovery means that physically something's wrong. So if you have an external hard drive, server, RAID, any type of media, this means that physically something is wrong. So there's two types of drives. The older school one is really the mechanical hard drives, and those mechanical hard drives have moving parts like a spindle motor, a head, an arm. It could be many different things inside, and that means that if there's lab recovery on that, you'd have to get that failed part replaced to get it up and running to extract the files from it. Nowadays, we have SSDs or solid-state drives, and with those, you really have them fail if there's an electrical short. So electrical short causes it to fail. Typically, you either have to solder anything onto the contacts to make it work again, or there might be some parts on the outside, but more likely after that, it's a two-prong approach where you do that electrical fixing or sometimes part swapping, and after that, there's usually encryptors on the drive where you have to decrypt. This could be in the range of anywhere from 2 to 6, sometimes 8 different encryptors that you have to work with to basically do software BIOS or some type of software fixing to get past that. So it's tough, and SSDs do demand more of a premium for lab recovery, all right? So there's many prices with lab recovery. Lab recovery, we've seen anywhere from $750, and sometimes it goes up to $10,000 plus. If you have multiple drives in a RAID, a 5, a 10 series, a server, it could be through the roof. And it really just does depend on how many drives you have that have failed. So, what I'm trying to say is it could be pricey. But what I'm suggesting is, and as like a bonus as a customer, what you should be asking any company that you do, what is called lab recovery, ask them if they could bypass the damage. Ask them if there's a way to get around it. Because I know for us, if we see that it might be lab recovery, there are always ways to bypass. On mechanical drives, for instance, there's usually two heads. One head's bad, you can bypass the bad head to go to the good head and get your files. On SSDs, there's similar fashions where you can bypass it, the damage, and get to it. So there's ways, and obviously there's ways to do it to keep it cheaper and to get your files back maybe not faster, but at a cheaper rate, because you are still at the mercy of the drive and how fast it goes. But that's something to ask. That's a question to ask any company you're doing data recovery, well, that turns into lab recovery. Ask them, is there a way to bypass this damage to make it cheaper? Because there are options. Obviously, you want to let them know that you don't want to cause more damage to the drive by trying to do this bypass method if it might do that. So, there's a risk reward, but bring it up. So next time you go, hopefully you're not in this situation, back up your files, back up. But if you're in this situation where you have files and you need to get them back and get to a lab recovery, first of all, ask this company, can you bypass it? And you know what? They're not the only company that does it. Get second opinions, get third opinions, and see what's going on with it. Get different prices. Make sure everybody who's checking it out, they don't do any excess damage that's already on there. And just check out your options. Make sure that you do your due diligence with this, and that way you won't get ripped off if you get that scenario where you do have a lab recovery. All right. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, suggestions, let me know. And great. Speak to you guys soon. Take care.